Hey, so full disclosure, I actually started this challenge like a year ago. My original goal was to get it done before Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl came out, but that didn't work out. Thankfully though, I was actually writing the script, recording, editing while I was still doing the challenge. So up until Piers was already edited before I even picked this challenge back up again. That does mean you gotta put up with my old mic quality, and also there's a bit of outdated stuff right at the start when I make a comment about the one type only challenge, but... And before anyone says, well, why don't you just re-record and re-edit it? As I'm recording this bit right now, this little intro, I literally just finished the challenge about 5 minutes ago, and Scarlet and Violet come out this Friday. Yeah, here's hoping I can get this video up before then. We'll see. Anyway, I just thought I'd give you that little intro just so you know what's going on. Enjoy! I've gotten a bit tired of the repetition of my Fire Red one-type only challenges, as you can probably tell from the big gap between putting up the electric types only stream and the recap of it, so I've decided to take a break from that for a bit while I work on a number of other videos. That said, I also had an idea for another challenge, so today we're asking the question, can you beat Pokemon Shield using only first stage starter Pokemon? Now, some clarification here. This isn't limited to only the Galar starters. The Kanto, Hoenn, and Alola starters are also available in Gen 8, so I'll be allowing myself to use those. Eevee also counts since it's a starter in Let's Go Eevee, but Pikachu doesn't count despite being a starter in both Yellow and Let's Go Pikachu, because it hasn't been a first stage Pokemon for about 20 something years now. Had Pichu never been introduced in Gen 2, then Pikachu would count for this challenge. Also, with the way experience works in Gen 8, it's going to be too hard to try and match levels, so I'll just do my best to stay around everyone's levels. As usual, we'll be using a set battle style with no items in battle, though all of my Pokemon will be holding Everstones as I get them, so that I don't accidentally evolve them. I chose to do this in Shield because my main save game is in Sword, which I'm going to have to use since obviously you only get one starter at the beginning of the game. You do get Charmander after beating the main story, and you get a choice of either Squirtle or Bulbasaur during the Isle of Armor story, but Charmander comes way too late, and also I won't be doing the DLC for this video. So obviously my first step before starting a new game was to spend a day breeding Pokemon in Sword to transfer into Pokemon Home. Yes, I know I bred an Eevee when you can get a free Gigantamax Eevee early on, but you need to have Let's Go Eevee for that, and I don't have either Let's Go game. With that, we go over to Shield and meet our rival Hop, grabbing our massive rectangular bag and nipple hat to go meet his big brother and Galar champion Leon, who gives us a starter Pokemon. As you probably could tell from it being the only one I didn't breed, I went with Sobble. No real reason for this other than I just like Sobble. I'll skip over the rival battles for this one, so straight on to the Milo battle. For the battle against Australia's favourite chocolatey drink, we have Charmander at level 19 with the moves Scratch, Firefang, Ember and Dragon Breath, as well as Torchic at level 18 with the moves Aerial Ace, Flame Charge, Ember and Quick Attack. As you can probably tell, this seems slightly easier than one type only, as we have options for types now. We walk out onto the pitch where Milo promotes this game's gimmick, and the battle begins as our Torchic takes on Milo's Gossifleur. A Flame Charge takes out half of Gossifleur's HP, and when the retaliatory move is a not very effective Magical Leaf, another Flame Charge is enough for the win. Milo sends in his Eldegoss and immediately Dynamaxes it as we call for another Flame Charge. With the additional health, Eldegoss doesn't take it too badly and responds with a Max Overgrowth that Milo calls that Dynamax move, but isn't that just any move he uses in Dynamax? Anyway, with our speed maxed out, we change tactics, calling for Aerial Ace. It doesn't do much as Max Strike takes Torchic out, making this a one-on-one. We send in Charmander and Dynamax immediately, calling for a Max Flare that does a decent amount of damage and brings on Harsh Sunlight. Eldegoss responds with another Max Overgrowth, but that's its last Dynamax turn, meaning with one more Max Flare, we've officially earned our first gym badge.
Moving on to Nessa, we have Grookey at level 21 with the moves Knock Off, Razor Leaf, Branch Poke and Taunt. Bulbasaur is at level 22 with Takedown, Leech Seed, Razor Leaf and Poison Powder. And finally Trico is at level 21 with Assurance, Giga Drain, Leafage and Quick Attack. Nessa sends out Goldeen while we send out Grookey. A Razor Leaf hits hard, taking out close to a third of Goldeen's health, but an agility means Goldeen is able to get off a Horn attack before being taken down by another Razor Leaf. Arrokuda comes out next, and I see no reason to stop what's working as another Razor Leaf knocks Arrokuda deep into red health. Another Razor Leaf knocks it out, leaving only Dreadnought, who Nessa immediately Dynamaxes. A Max Strike takes out Grookey as we send out Bulbasaur, who lives through a Max Darkness on 3 HP, firing off a Leech Seed. Dreadnought's last Dynamax turn is spent knocking Bulbasaur out with another Max Darkness as we send in Trico, Dynamaxing him and taking out Dreadnought with a 4 times effective Max Overgrowth, earning us the Water Badge. Up next is Kabu, and for the man originally from Hoenn, we have Sobble at level 26 with the moves Swift, Sucker Punch, Water Gun and Water Pulse. Mudkip is level 29 with Takedown, Rock Slide, Water Pulse and Rock Smash. And finally, Popplio is also at level 29 with Bubble Beam, Aqua Jet, Icy Wind and Disarming Voice. This one took several tries, and I can now see why in-game so many people quit their gym challenges after failing to beat Kabu. However, most of those failed attempts aren't even recorded because my computer decided to freeze up and force an update mid-recording. In the attempt where we were finally victorious, we start off with Popplio against Kabu's Ninetales. Ninetales pretty much always started off with Will-O-Wisp, burning Popplio, but our retaliatory Bubble Beam isn't affected by the attack drop. Ninetales fires back with an Ember, and one more Bubble Beam makes short work of him. That gets Popplio up to level 30 where he learns Hyper Voice, replacing Disarming Voice, and though it's a normal type move, our Popplio has its hidden ability Liquid Voice, which turns all sound-based moves into water type, meaning that after surviving a bite, one Hyper Voice is enough to take out Arcanine. Kabu sends in his Center Scorch, and this becomes our first Gigantamax opponent. Knowing we won't survive a hit, we call for Aqua Jet so we can at least do some damage, though it's not much as Popplio is taken out by a Max Flutterby. We send in Sobble, who outspeeds and gets off a Water Pulse as Center Scorch fires off another Max Flutterby to take Sobble out. We send in Mudkip and immediately Dynamax her as Center Scorch uses its last Dynamax turn to fire off one more Max Flutterby before a 4 times effective Max Rockfall takes the Firebug type out, earning us the Fire Badge. That takes us on to Allister, and against the first of the 2 Shield exclusive gym leaders, we've got Sobble at level 34 with Liquidation replacing Water Gun, Charmander is at level 41 with Inferno replacing Fire Fang, Popplio's at level 34 with Moonblast replacing Aqua Jet, and finally Litten is at level 39 with Thrash, Flamethrower, Bite and Lick. I did try to use some of the other Pokemon who haven't had a chance to shine yet, but I just couldn't get the experience up in time, and I already had this team at a close enough level. Also, most of my previous attempts had me using Bulbasaur instead of Popplio, but with only one attacking move that actually does damage, I had to make that switch because I legitimately have an hour-and-a-half long recording of me losing this battle over and over again. That's especially bad when you realize that I never reset and all those extra levels I'm over by came from battling Allister. We open up with Popplio against Allister's Galarian Yamask. One Water-type Hyper Voice is enough to put the part Ground-type down as Allister sends in Mimikyu. Our first order of business against the Pikachu clone is to break its disguise, so as it uses Slash, we call for Icy Wind, not only breaking the disguise, but also lowering Mimikyu's speed. Another Slash is met by a missed Icy Wind as Allister sets up with Hone Claws before another Icy Wind results in another speed drop. It's not enough though, as Mimikyu still outspeeds, getting off a powered up Slash that evens up the match. We send in Litten and call for a Lick, which is weakened by Baby Doll Eyes but does get exactly what we were looking for: Paralysis. Another Lick gets Mimikyu into yellow health as he once again uses Baby Doll Eyes before a Flamethrower takes Mimikyu deep into red and a Lick finishes him off. Up next for Allister is Cursula, and we call for Lick, hoping for another Paralysis but don't get it. Cursula calls for Curse as we continue to Lick, getting Cursula into red health before she finishes Litten off with Ancient Power. We send in Sobble and immediately call for Sucker Punch as the priority move knocks Cursula out. That just leaves Gengar, who Allister immediately Gigantamaxes on entry. We call for a Sucker Punch, making sure we get a hit in as Gengar uses Max Darkness, which Sobble manages to live through, getting off another Sucker Punch before being taken out by Max Ooze. That just leaves Charmander for us, who we immediately Dynamax as I start to feel this is going to be another loss. However, after surviving in red health from a Max Ooze, Charmander gets off a Max Flare that's just enough to finish off Gengar and earn us the Ghost Badge. That was incredibly difficult. In half of those failed attempts, we didn't even make it to Gengar, and of that half the time we didn't even make it past Mimikyu. But now we move on to Opal, and against the Fairy-type gym leader, we've got Poplio at level 34 with the same moves as before, Litten at level 40 with Flare Blitz replacing Lick, Scorbunny is also at level 40 with the moves Double Edge, Counter, Flame Charge and Bounce, and finally Trico is at level 42 with Leaf Storm replacing Giga Drain, Energy Ball replacing Leafage, and Slam replacing Quick Attack. Again, I tried to get new faces in on this one, but this was another near half-hour recording session and there were a lot of team changes. Opal asks you questions throughout her battle, and if you get them right, you get a 2-stage boost to certain stats. Get them wrong, however, and those stats go down 2 stages. We open up with Poplio against Opal's Galarian Weezing. A Sludge and a Hyper Voice do about the same amount of damage before the first question comes along, resulting in a 2-stage boost to Poplio's speed. Once again, Sludge and Hyper Voice do near the same amount of damage before we call for a Bubble Beam. Opal sends in Mawile, which is exactly why we have 2 fire types. A Hyper Voice actually does a decent amount of damage, but a Crunch takes Poplio out. We send in Scorbunny as the next question comes along, giving a 2-stage boost to each of Scorbunny's defenses. Against the part Steel type, a single Flame Charge is enough for the win. Opal sends in Togekiss next as we take out close to a quarter of its HP with Double Edge before being hit by a super effective Ancient Power. Thanks to the defense boost though, it's not too bad, but I for some reason thought Ancient Power was still a physical move from the pre-split days, and so called the counter, which fails after another Ancient Power. Another Double Edge gets Togekiss to about a third health, but the recoil leaves Scorbunny on 10 HP, making it easy for one more Ancient Power to finish it. Weird as it may seem, but really we're just trying to buy time here, we send in Trico. Trico's taken out by a single Air Cutter as we send in Litten, immediately Dynamaxing him. Litten lives on half health from an Ancient Power before firing off a Max Flare that takes the first baby Pokemon's fully evolved form out, leading to Opal's Gigantamax Alchemy. Thankfully though, Fire resists Fairy, so after a Max Flare does a lot of damage, Litten easily lives through a G-Max finale to fire off one more Max Flare to earn us the Fairy Badge. That takes us on to Melanie, the second Shield exclusive gym leader and Mother of Sword exclusive gym leader Gordy. And for her, we've got Torchic at level 44 with an all-new moveset of Flare Blitz, Flamethrower, Bounce and Reversal. Litten's at level 45 with the same moves as before. Scorbunny's in the same camp, being level 45 with an unchanged moveset. And finally Charmander is at level 48, yet again with the same moves as ever. As time goes on, it becomes harder to keep everyone at the same levels, and also I'm writing and editing this video as I'm doing the challenge, so that's way too much shit to keep up on. With a team full of fire types, this should be an easy one against an ice type gym leader, at least for our first 3 Pokemon. Once we get to the water ice type Lapras, then we may be in some trouble. Until then though, Melanie's first Pokemon is the ice bug type Frostmoth. It gets off a Feather Dance, but one Flamethrower pretty much obliterates it. Or incinerates, whichever word you prefer. Up next is Galarian Darmanitan, and again a Flamethrower hits hard, though Darmanitan lives in red health, getting off a Headbutt and changing into its Zen form. Despite the loss of a Fire-type weakness, one more Flamethrower is still enough to finish it off. Out next is Ice-Q, and you guessed it, another Flamethrower. Ice-Q responds with Amnesia, but it's too little too late as one more Flamethrower finishes it off. Finally, Melanie sends out her Lapras and immediately Gigantamaxes it. With our boosted speed, we easily get off the first shot, but thanks to the feather dance from earlier, the flare blitz we used doesn't hit as hard as it could. However, it does exactly what we wanted, burning Lapras. Lapras then fires off a max geyser, knocking Torchic out and causing rain on the field. Then I wanted to check if either of Litten's attack stats were significantly higher than the other, and without realizing it, accidentally flicked the stick downwards, switching to Score Bunny and sending the rabbit out instead of the cat. Score Bunny still manages to get off a flame charge before being one-shotted by a max geyser, and this time we actually send out Litten. Litten gets off another flare blitz to try and whittle away, but another max geyser means the end of our cat. However, that's Lapras's last Gigantamax turn while we still have a Charmander to Dynamax. Charmander outspeeds, getting off a weakened max flare that sets up harsh sunlight. Not only does that mean that Lapras's Surf is weakened, but our next max flare is now powered up and hits hard for legitimately our only first attempt victory so far. In the gym battles at least. If I include rival battles, there are a number of first try wins as well as a number of multiple attempt wins, but if I included all of the rival battles, this video would be at least 3 times longer than it is already. With that, we move on to Piers, and for this one I tried to get in the 2 that we haven't used yet. That does mean we're using a Gigantamax Eevee in the 1 gym battle where you can't Dynamax, but shut up. For this one, our team consists of Rowlet at level 49 with the moves Leaf Blade, Brave Bird, Shadow Sneak, and Knockoff. Litten is at level 49 with the same moves as before. Charmander is at level 53, also having the same moves as before. And finally, Eevee is at level 51 with Bite, Shadow Ball, Swift, and Double Edge. In all of my attempts before this specific one, I did have Torchic in place of Litten, but there's really only one part from that I want to show. Sorry, that edit was in my head since I did it. Anyways, we send out Rowlet against Scrafty. Fake Out causes a flinch and Payback does some damage before a Brave Bird takes out about half of Scrafty's health. We then run that turn again with Scrafty and Rowlet both left in red. Knowing we won't survive another hit, we call for Shadow Sneak. It's not very effective, but it at least does a small amount of damage so that when Litten comes in, a single bite is enough to take Scrafty out. Piers sends in Malamar next as we call for Flare Blitz, taking out close to half the Dark Psychic type's HP before he uses Foul Play. Litten manages to survive on 10 HP though, getting off a flamethrower to knock out the Pokemon brought on by one of the weirdest evolution methods ever. Piers then sends in Obstagoon, who gets off a Shadow Claw, taking Litten out. We then send in Charmander and pray that Inferno hits. We have to get through a Throat Chop first, but it hits, guaranteeing a burn. With that, Obstagoon's next Throat Chop is weakened, allowing Charmander to live on 6 HP and fire off a flamethrower, putting Obstagoon on low HP so the burn can take him out. Up last for Piers is Skuntank, and Lady Luck is on our side as Charmander gets off another Inferno, putting Skuntank on low HP and burning him before he takes out Charmander with a Snarl before succumbing to the burn. In the end, we didn't use Eevee, but to be fair, Eevee's gotten a lot of use in other battles, you just haven't seen them. Plus, Eevee fought in literally every single other battle where we failed to get the Dark Badge.
Alright, so this is the part where the modern commentary takes over, and don't worry all you Eevee fans, he got his time to shine in the battle against Raihan. This was an ever-rotating roster, and honestly, Eevee was the biggest difference maker. Raihan only does double battles, and his team is set up to make sure Sandstorm is almost always active. On top of that, while half his team can be dealt with using either water or grass type, that all comes crashing down when he sends out his ace, his Gigantamax Duraludon, a steel dragon type meaning a 2 times resistance to water and a 4 times resistance to grass. I was using any fire types to try to deal with it, but that part dragon typing removed the fire type weakness. So when I put Eevee in the fire type slot, I wasn't expecting much, but let's see how our first attempt with Eevee went. Raihan opens up with his usual duo of Flygon and Gigalith while we send out Poplio and Rowlet. Flygon gets the first hit off with a breaking swipe, lowering both our Pokemon's attack, meaning Rowlet's Leaf Blade would have been weakened, but a critical hit gets Flygon down to around half health. That's followed up by an Icy Wind from Poplio, and though it doesn't do much to Gigalith, the 4 times weak to ice Flygon can't take it and faints. After Gigalith's speed unnecessarily drops, he sets up with Stealth Rock before Raihan replaces his Fallen Dragonfly, a creature I am not scared of, with a Snake, a creature I am terrified of. With Gigalith's hefty defense, I see fit to focus on the nice boulder, so although Sandaconda uses Protect, a combination of Leaf Blade and a Water-type Hyper Voice puts Gigalith into red health before he body presses Poplio. Knowing that Gigalith will faint this turn, we call for Rowlet to use Leaf Blade on Sandaconda, but before he can do that, the Snake hits hard with a Fire Fang. Thankfully it's not stabbed, so Rowlet manages to live on 20 HP, slicing Sandaconda to half health before another Water-type Hyper Voice finishes off both opponents. This was already going way better than any other attempt, but the metal wall known as Duraludon was next to come out. Knowing there wasn't much either of our Pokemon could do, I simply settled for getting any shot off that I could. A max Rockfall takes Rowlet out, and we send in Sobble, who is the first victim of Stealth Rocks. Again, just wanting to get a shot in, we call for Sobble to use Sucker Punch before a D-Max Depletion obliterates him. A Moonblast from Poplio gets Duraludon into orange health before we send out Eevee, immediately Gigantamaxing him. Though the Skyscraper is able to knock Poplio out with a Max Knuckle, pair of Max Phantasms from Eevee secures us the win and earns us the Dragon Badge. With our badge ring full, we move on to Winden and the Champions Cup, and the first and only rival battles to be covered in this video. First up is Marnie, younger sister of the Spikemouth gym leader Piers. Going into this one, I didn't really have a plan, but for the 5-on-5 battle, I ultimately settled on the team of Mudkip, Eevee, Sobble, Charmander, and Rowlet. The only one in this for a specific reason was Rowlet to deal with Marnie's fighting types. Marnie opens up with her Lipid as we start with Mudkip. Lipid sets up with a nasty plot as we hit with a Rock Smash. Our super effective move obviously makes Marnie uncomfortable as she calls for Torment, preventing us from using the same move twice in a row. I had originally wound up getting Torment and Taunt confused as it still let the Rock Smash I'd already called for go through. But it doesn't matter as before Mudkip can finish things with Double Edge, she's taken out by Snarl. Charmander steps in to take Mudkip's place, and though he's hit hard by a Snarl, one Flamethrower is all it takes to finish Lipid off. Marnie calls on Scrafty next, and when a Flamethrower only gets her to about half health, a Crunch finishes off our Lizard. Our next Pokemon is the one we added specifically for this eventuality, so we send in Rowlet, who loses about a third of his health to a Crunch before knocking Scrafty out with a Brave Bird. Seeing the weakness in front of her, Marnie sends out her Toxicroak next, who fires off a Venoshock that Rowlet somehow just manages to live through before hitting hard with another Brave Bird for a double knockout. We call on Sobble as Marnie sends out her Morpeko. A Torment leaves Sobble standing, who fires off a Water Pulse, taking out about half of Morpeko's health. Sobble then somehow lives on 2 HP from a Spark before liquidating Morpeko to make it a 2-on-1. Marnie's final Pokemon is Grimmsnarl, who she immediately Gigantamaxes, though it's somehow still slower than Sobble, who takes out around a quarter of Grimmsnarl's health with a Water Pulse before falling to a G-Max Snooze. That just leaves us with Eevee, whom we immediately Gigantamax, hitting hard with a G-Max Cuddle that takes Grimmsnarl into the red. A Max Starfall leaves Eevee on 39 HP, but on the next turn, Marnie uses a full restore, basically wasting Grimmsnarl's final Gigantamax turn as a couple more G-Max Cuddles hand us the win. This actually was not that difficult of a battle. This was only the second attempt, and even in the first attempt where I used Bulbasaur instead of Rowlet, it came down to a 1-on-1 with Grimmsnarl at half health. Up next is battle number 6872 with Hop, and for this one we've gone for the team of... Okay, it's actually just dawned on me while scripting this that I unintentionally did almost the exact same team as the last battle. I just have Torchic in place of Eevee. Anyway, we send in Torchic while Hop starts off with his Dubwool. A Cotton Guard is wasted as we fire off a Flamethrower that does about half of Dubwool's health, and a second one gets him into the red before he's hit hard with a Body Slam. However, my entire plan was to get Torchic low on health, so the reversal we hit back with does a lot more damage, knocking the sheep out. Snorlax comes out next, and, predicting a high horsepower, we switch into Rowlet, who's unaffected by the attack. Snorlax's incredible bulk allows it to easily take a Leaf Blade before getting a critical hit on Heavy Slam. After another exchange of Leaf Blade and Heavy Slam, it becomes pretty clear that Rowlet isn't living another turn, so we risk it all calling for Brave Bird. Unfortunately, Snorlax manages to survive on 1 HP, but Torchic is able to finish the job with another reversal. Pincurchin's in next, who takes a flamethrower reasonably well before knocking Torchic out with a Thunderbolt. In what seems like a crazy move, we send in Mudkip next, but a dig makes it avoid Thunderbolt. The hit doesn't knock Pincurchin out though, and so with another Thunderbolt, Hop finally gets the lead in the battle. The lead doesn't last long though, as we send in Charmander, who finishes Pincurchin off with a flamethrower. Things go from bad to worse for Hop, as his only remaining non-ace Pokemon is the part Steel-type Corviknight. Though he does get off a Scary Face and a Drill Peck, he can't stand up to 2 flamethrowers. Hop's ace is his Cinderace, who he immediately Dynamaxes because the Galar starters didn't have Gigantamax forms until the DLCs came out. A Max Airstream takes Charmander out, but our final Pokemon is Sobble, who we immediately Dynamax, and though Sobble takes some hard hits, a couple of Max Geysers secure us the win. After that we go down to the lobby to meet Leon, who invites us to dinner, and man, the ending to this game does not make much sense. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Sword and Shield, but this ending is just... Okay, so Leon invites us out to dinner, but then he's late, which it turns out is because he's in a meeting with Chairman Rose. Then Oleana, the chairman's assistant, basically says not to worry about it and make sure we, a couple of children, can't interrupt a business meeting. So we steal the key from an employee who's just doing his job, break into private property, and then battle Oleana. Okay, I might as well cover that battle. Oddly enough though, in keeping with my idiocy, it took a few attempts at this battle before I thought to feed some Pokemon some Dynamax candies. Oleana sends out her Frostlass, and we send in Charmander. A Hex does a decent amount of damage to Charmander, but one Flamethrower is enough to get the first knockout. Seeing the weakness, Oleana sends in Milotic, and we call for Dragon Breath, knowing it won't do much in the way of damage. But it wasn't the damage I was after, as Milotic gets paralyzed. One Surf easily washes away Charmander, and we send in Rowlet. A Leaf Blade takes Milotic down to around a quarter health, which goes up slightly higher thanks to an Aqua Ring. That turns out to be useless though, as one more Leaf Blade finishes the Sea Serpent off. Oleana's next Pokemon is Salazzle, who poisons Rowlet with Poison Gas. Our only option worth a damn is Brave Bird, which takes out a big chunk of Salazzle's health. Knowing a Venoshock is coming, we call for Shadow Sneak to get in a hit before Rowlet is taken down by the powered up Poison move. We next send in Scorbunny, who is also poisoned before springing high up for a bounce. That causes another Venoshock to miss, and when bounce hits, Oleana is down to 2. Unfortunately for her, her next Pokemon is Zarina, who does get off in Acrobatics, but is weak to the retaliatory Flame Charge. She does live though, as Scorbunny faints to poison, and another Acrobatics does a lot of damage to Torchic, but Zarina can't stand up to a flamethrower. That just leaves Oleana's ace, Garbodor, whom she immediately Gigantamaxes. Thanks to Speed Boost, Torchic is able to move first and so gets out of the way of a Max Quake thanks to Bounce. The move doesn't do much damage when it hits, but it does paralyze Garbodor, as well as activating its Weak Armor ability, lowering its defense. When Torchic is taken out with a Max Rockfall, we send in Mudkip, Dynamaxing her and hitting with our own Max Quake after Garbodor is fully paralyzed. That's Garbodor's final Gigantamax turn, and while she gets off a Gunk Shot, Mudkip is able to finish the battle with one more Max Quake. Okay, so then we finally reach Leon and Rose, who are at the end of their meeting anyway, and Leon makes a good point that Rose's whole plan is to stop an energy crisis 1,000 years in the future, so why does he have to enact his plan on literally the next day? Anyway, before the semifinals can start, we're challenged by our rival Bead, or Bead, or I don't know how to pronounce his name. I also know that I'm not alone in that I absolutely thought he was a she when I first saw him. Anyways, onto the battle. Bead starts with Mawile while we send in Charmander. One flamethrower easily takes out the Deceiver Pokemon and Bead sends in Gardevoir. Gardevoir sets up with Wish as we call for an Inferno, taking out about half of Gardevoir's health and burning her. Gardevoir hits hard with a Psychic and unfortunately on the second attempt, Inferno misses. Wish takes Gardevoir back up to full health, though the burn takes her down a little bit. One more Psychic finishes Charmander off as we send in Rowlet, who strikes hard with a Leaf Blade, taking Gardevoir down to about a quarter. Another hard-hitting Psychic takes Rowlet to half before one more Leaf Blade finishes off Gardevoir and Bead calls on his Galarian Rapidash. A crit Psycho Cut obliterates Rowlet and we send in Mudkip, who just manages to live through another crit Psycho Cut before hitting a Surf. That's all she can do though, as one more Psycho Cut takes her down and we send in our Gigantamax Eevee. Eevee takes a Psycho Cut fairly well before obliterating Rapidash with a G-Max Cuddle. Bead's final Pokemon is his Gigantamax Hatterene, who's hit hard by a G-Max Cuddle, making Hatterene fall in love with Eevee before hitting a Max Flare. One more G-Max Cuddle takes Hatterene down to just a few hit points, but he's immobilized by Love. With the low health, Bead uses a full restore as we call for Bite. Then the most fortuitous thing happens as our 10 HP Eevee is free to just fire off Shadow Balls, as Hatterene is constantly immobilized by Love, securing us the win. That takes us on to the semi-finals and... Jesus, this nearly broke me. Okay, so... Nessa. Seems easy enough to deal with, right? She's a water-type trainer. I can use a team almost exclusively filled with grass types, except she plans for that eventuality. Her first Pokemon is Golisopod. Fuck, add that to the list of words and names I'm not sure how to pronounce. Rowlet seems like the obvious choice since there's no grass-type weakness there, but there is a flying-type weakness. But then Golisopod gets below half health, which activates its emergency exit, and she sends in Barrascuda, who has Ice Fang, and, surprisingly, it's a lot faster than a bunch of unevolved starter Pokemon. I was at this battle for a while, but I don't even have all that footage. Partly because I deleted the first couple of 20-minute long unsuccessful attempts, but also because as I was recording, my power went out. Now, here's the funny thing. Since that recording got lost because, you know, my PC lost power, I attempted to lose the battle. However, I was already at her Gigantamax Dreadnought with my Dynamax Trico, and, well, I accidentally won the battle. I quickly scrambled to get my phone to record it, which is why this footage looks so bad as I struggled to record and hit the A button, but there you go, Nessa's beaten. That takes us on to Allister. Dusknoir vs Charmander is the first face-off of the battle, and Inferno takes out close to half of Dusknoir's HP and also burns it, weakening the Rock Tomb he fires at us. We repeat that exact same turn again, but this time the burn finishes Dusknoir off, and Allister sends in Cursola. Expecting an Ancient Power, we switch out to Eevee, who doesn't take it too badly, though Cursola does get the across-the-board stat boost. A Bite does some decent damage as well as activating Weak Armor and causing a flinch, but the increased speed means Cursola gets off another Ancient Power, leaving Eevee in red before he finishes Cursola with another Bite. Chandelure is out next and he's able to finish Eevee off with Mystical Fire. We send in Sobble, who hits hard with a Liquidation, taking out more than half of Chandelure's health, but a Will-O-Wisp forces us to switch to Hydro Pump. Allister sends in Poltegeist, and knowing a Giga Drain is coming, we switch out to Rowlet. A crit Shadow Sneak does a lot of damage, and unfortunately for Allister, this is his second Pokemon with weak armor. While a Shadow Ball hits hard, another Shadow Sneak finishes off the Teapot. Last up for the exclusive gym leader is his Gigantamax Gengar, and, wanting to get a hit in, we call for another Shadow Sneak before Rowlet is taken out with a Max Ooze. At this point though, it's just a waiting game as we send in Sobble, hitting with a Sucker Punch. A Max Darkness takes our starter out as Charmander re-enters the battle. One more Max Ooze takes him out, but we still have a Mudkip to Dynamax. Despite being hit hard by a gunk shot, a single max quake is enough to earn us the win and take us on to Raihan. And once again, I was stuck here for what felt like an eternity. I can't even tell you how long I was here for because, again, I've deleted the long recordings that have most of my failures. Anyway, with Raihan starting off with Torkoal, a water type seems like the obvious choice, but Drought negates the advantage, so our best choice is sending in Charmander to start. An Inferno takes out about half of Torkoal's health before a Body Press does the same to Charmander. A Flamethrower comes just short of the mark as a Yawn causes a switch to Eevee we know will be free because Raihan uses a full restore. A takedown does nearly half of Torkoal's restored health and Eevee takes a Solar Beam pretty well before finishing Torkoal with another takedown. Turtonator's in next, and while a takedown does do about 2/3 of its health, that triggers its Shell Trap, taking Eevee out. We send in Mudkip calling for Surf, which leaves Turtonator on 1 HP before he uses Sunny Day. Raihan attempts another Shell Trap, but we call for Dig. Another attempted Shell Trap is thwarted when Dig knocks Turtonator out. Goodra's out next, and by sheer luck misses Thunder, allowing us to hit a takedown. Not wanting to miss Thunder again, Raihan calls for Rain Dance, but predicting it, we call for Dig, avoiding the Thunder. Unfortunately, once Mudkip resurfaces, she's free to be hit by another bolt of Thunder, knocking her out. We send in Rowlet, hoping the partial grass typing will save us, and it pays off. A Brave Bird takes Goodra out as Raihan calls on his Flygon. Flygon sets up with Sandstorm as we hit with a Leaf Blade that actually takes out close to half of Flygon's HP. To add on to that, Rowlet survives a Dragon Claw before finishing Flygon off with another Leaf Blade. Raihan's final Pokemon is that damn Gigantamax Duraludon who gets hit by a Shadow Sneak before taking Rowlet out with a Max Rockfall. We send in Charmander, who's more or less here as fodder, falling to another Max Rockfall. That just leaves Poplio, who we immediately Dynamax, calling for a Max Starfall. While Duraludon takes it well, his last Gigantamax turn is spent on a Max Knuckle that really doesn't do much damage, and when he fails to finish the job with Stone Edges, 2 more Max Starfalls give us the win. And then it's back to the stories, so we enter the pitch to battle Leon, and then Rose decides at this moment, not during any of the earlier matches, not after the battle is over, just as the championship battle is about to begin, to enact his plan. Okay. We head to Hammerlock Stadium and its power plant for one final climactic battle with Rose. The Macrocosmos chairman and chairman of the Gala Pokemon League looks down at his Pokeball, questioning if he can go through with this, but ultimately he sticks to his guns and battles. One final showdown. So he sends out his Escavalier and Charmander beats it with a Flamethrower. And then his Kling gets in a Wild Charge but goes down to a Flamethrower. Then his Ferrothorn goes down to a Flamethrower. And then Berserker goes down to a Flamethrower. And then his Copper Archer Gigantamaxes and takes out both Charmander and Torchic, but then it goes down to some Flamethrowers and a Flare Blitz. And then we head up to the roof and see the reason I can't hate this game's ending, because just look at this cinematic masterpiece. We do catch Eternatus, but that's not important for this challenge. What is important is the final championship battle with Leon, and look, I tried, okay? I really tried, but Leon has a really good team consisting of 2 fully evolved starters, one of which can Gigantamax, as well as the champion's customary regional pseudo-legend. Even leveling up as much as I could on a time crunch, this was impossible to do with the rules we set out. So, with that in mind, it's time to abandon one of the long-established challenge rules. For one battle only, I am allowing my Pokemon to hold an item other than an Everstone in battle. Those items are as follows. Torchic is holding a Bright Powder, Poplio, and Assault Vest. Now, I know Rowlet is shown on screen right now holding an Oranberry, but this was recorded before my first attempt with this, and I forgot to give it back on the second attempt. Charmander is holding a Focus Sash. Eevee is in the same boat as Rowlet with a berry I forgot to give it back. And finally, Mudkip is holding Soft Sand. Let's see how attempt number 2 with held items played out. Leon starts with Aegislash and we start with Torchic. A King's Shield protects Aegislash for one turn before he gets hit with a flamethrower on the next turn. Despite the massive attack boost from switching to Blade form, the Shadow Ball it fires off leaves Torchic on 1 HP before another flamethrower hands us the first win of the battle. Leon sends in his Haxorus next, and with the speed boost we call for Bounce, avoiding Haxorus' Earthquake. After Bounce hits, the Bright Powder comes into effect as Torchic dodges another Earthquake. A 1 HP reversal hits hard, but one more Earthquake takes Torchic out. We send in Rowlet next, meaning Leon switches to Outrage. It only gets one hit though, as a Brave Bird takes Haxorus out. Up next for Leon is Rhyperior, and although he has a Fire-type move, he never gets the chance to use it as a crit Leaf Blade takes him out. Leon sends in his Dragapult next, and after a Shadow Sneak, Leon finally knocks Rowlet out with a Flamethrower. We send in Charmander, who lives through a Shadow Ball and gets off a Dragon Breath, paralyzing the Pseudo Legend before a second Dragon Breath knocks it out. Last before his ace is Leon's Rillaboom, who's able to knock Charmander out with a high horsepower. We send in Eevee, and though I'm sure people may question it, the best option is to Gigantamax Eevee and call for a G-Max Cuddle. Rillaboom does get an Endeavor in, but 2 Cuddles is all it takes to knock the gorilla out before Leon sends in his Gigantamax Charizard. A Max Rockfall isn't quite enough to take Eevee out, so on his final Gigantamax turn he gets in one more Max Cuddle that gets Charizard around half health. A Max Overgrowth finishes Eevee off, as well as one-shotting Mudkip, but that ends Charizard's Gigantamax time. Popplio is able to live through a Fire Blast and finish the job with a Water-typed Hyper Voice. And with that, we have officially beaten Pokemon Shield using only first stage starter Pokemon. A challenge that took a year to complete. I'll have a video up sometime soon explaining my current situation with time, but I'll just say I'm not exactly sure how often I'll be able to upload videos at the moment, but hopefully I've managed to get this video up before Scarlet and Violet come out. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.